Ma'am, can we start?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hello. A very good evening to one and all present here. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Akila Sadasivan, a highly respected clinical child neuropsychologist and director of Summit Psych Services. She holds an MPhil from NIMHANS and PhD from University of Canterbury, New Zealand. With more than 2 decades of experience in the field of mental health, Dr. Sadasivan has worked extensively with individuals facing a wide range of emotional and psychological challenges, helping build healthier and more balanced lives. Dr. Sadasivan specializes in neurodevelopmental challenges. Dr. Sadasivan specializes in working with children and adolescents with learning difficulties, ADHD, and other neurodevelopmental challenges. She has developed innovative, culturally relevant intervention programs that combine neuropsychological and phonological approaches and has been actively involved in training parents, teachers, and caregivers. Her approach combines clinical expertise with deep empathy, and she's a passionate advocate for mental health awareness and accessible care. Today, ma'am will be sharing her insights on dealing with addiction in adolescence, a topic that is both timely and deeply important. We are really glad to have you here, ma'am. Participants, I would like to let you know that while this session is going, if you all can kindly mute yourselves, and if you all have any doubts, I would request you to put your questions and doubts in the chat box, which will be dealt towards the end of the session. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Arwa, for that. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session. I'm just sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible to all of you. Is my screen visible? Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right. So today we are talking about dealing with addiction in adolescence. In the last session, we spoke about how adolescence is an important phase and how identity formation is crucial, and how people being on screens a lot of times can be explained as to why it's important in adolescence, and at the same time, how it is harmful if they become or are labeled as or identified as problematic users. So we saw screen addiction come up briefly in the last week's topic, but we were primarily focusing on the need for adolescents to be on screens and social media in the last session. This session, we're particularly dealing with what happens when that becomes in excess, and in addition to that, other forms of addiction. So, as we know, adolescence is a period of a lot of change. There are psychological changes, there are physiological changes, there are biological changes, and a lot of change in the social interactions that adolescents maintain. They want to be seen with friends, they want to be viewed as independent beings, they want to contribute to their own success and to their own learning, and they want to be active participants in the world around themselves. They develop a huge sense of responsibility and also intimate relationships. Very often, this is a phase where they want to develop a sense of who they are. They want to explore boundaries. They want to figure out, how to gain more autonomy, and also to be able to find out, what they are capable of doing. And their whole sense of self revolves around what other people think of them. Because of multiple expectations on them, It could be expectations from peer groups. It could be expectations from family members. It could be expectations from, their teachers. There is a lot of stress on adolescents. It's challenging, therefore, because this also, unfortunately, is the phase where they're finishing different stages in school, which is very, very important for them. And so there is constant pressure on them to conform, pressure on them to perform, pressure on them to be at their best all uh, through. Uh, that in itself can cause a lot of either experiencing emotional stress, or it can also bring about a physical experience of stress. Um, this is a phase where a number of mental health issues begin to show. Many parents and teachers are often afraid of this phase because this is where they see a sudden shift, a sudden change in the kind of person that they've been dealing with. Maybe they're more emotional, suddenly argumentative, very angry, and they become rebellious sometimes, and that can be quite a challenge. It's also interesting to note that around late adolescence is when a number of mental health disorders can start showing signs. They may not get diagnosed, although a fair amount of them do get diagnosed in late adolescence, but a number of them show up for the first time in adolescence, which then in total makes this a very, very crucial phase for us as people who are involved with this group to really, be careful about how we talk to them, how we deal with them, because this can have a lifelong impact. At this point, I would also, of course, I'm going to, through my talk, also keep referring to this again and again. We need to be aware that there are certain changes that occur in the brain at this point, starting from, say, about 13 to about 19, which would have a long lasting impact on the way the adolescent then moves into adulthood. These changes in the brain, if the environment around them is conducive, these changes can then facilitate well adapted the development of a well adapted individual. But if these changes are impacted by negative interactions, it could be negative interactions with parents, negative interactions with peer group, any number of negative interactions, that then has a significant impact on the adolescent growing up. And then it also can leave a long lasting impact on the mental health of the individual. Because of the different changes in the brain that are happening, this stage, the adolescent or the individual is extremely sort of susceptible to developing addiction of different kinds. Why is this stage really critical for development of addiction? For three reasons. One, because of the peer group interactions that they have. And it's considered to be cool at this point, um, for them to have, to break norms. And so there is a lot of encouragement among the peer groups to appear cool, and risk-taking behaviors is something that is encouraged. Trying new different substances like alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs is something that is thought of as cool, and so that is encouraged. So there's a lot of peer pressure in this stage, and adolescents don't want to be left out. They want to seem cool in front of their peers, and therefore there is that pressure for them to fit in or be left out. The second reason is developmentally, they are in that phase where they're trying to break out of the shackles of their selves, that they the way they view themselves from the environment that they've grown in, and therefore they want to try something new, something different, and therefore they take risks, and addiction soon becomes a thing. It grows up on them, it creeps up on them before they even realize it. And the third reason, which is the most important reason, which is what now research seems to point out, is that at this point in time, the emotional centers in their brain, particularly the amygdala in the limbic system, takes over and is going through tremendous change and development at a rapid pace, much, much faster than the frontal lobes, which then the frontal lobes is known as the thinking center of the brain, while the amygdala is the feeling center. So the feeling center, or those regions in the brain which are responsible for emotional control and regulation, is developing much, much faster than the thinking and the logical section of the brain. And there are actually physical changes in the brain. So the brain goes through what is known as pruning, where certain connections are cut off, certain new connections are formed, and there are certain connections are strengthened. So this pruning process happens faster in the amygdala, a little slower in the frontal lobes, which means that they tend to be more emotional in their decision making, and that leads them to or to be at great risk for developing different forms of addiction. So if they've had a negative experience at this stage, let's say friends discriminate them, or they've been bullied, or parents have been neglectful, or they have been treated poorly, or there's been abuse. These are the people who then are at great risk for developing addiction. Another thing which research has clearly shown, if there is already, biology has primed the adolescents in such a way that they are prone to be more emotional at this point. Because of that, they tend to sort of want to try out different things as a way of coping with their stress. And this then leads to a further decrease in the volumes of the frontal lobes, and also poorer connectivity in the logical regions of the brain, which then makes them susceptible to addiction. And this is often referred to as a um, endophenotype, or a biological marker, which then places these individuals at risk. So in simple terms, what this means is that this individual who already is going through so many changes and is at great risk for crossing the threshold and going over onto the other side, because of certain negative experiences in his or her life, will then further, this negative experience will have an impact on the way the developmental process is impacted in the brain, further making them at significant risk for developing different forms of addiction. Addiction could be in the form of alcohol, substance use. It could be behavioral addiction in the form of gaming, or sexual addiction. And then the one that is everybody is battling with is different forms of social media and smartphone use. I would like to focus a lot more on social media and smartphone use, because I feel that that's what troubles a lot more people. But at no point in time am I trying to negate the presence of alcohol, cigarettes, or gaming addiction in adolescents. All of these are very real and definitely present in a number of adolescents. Right. So, like I said, in this phase, there's a great risk for different kinds of addictions. And so it's not something like, okay, this child has this stress factor and therefore will develop addiction. It doesn't work that way. There is no single factor. There are multiple factors that can produce a kind of which is known as a risk factor. So, number of studies have looked at how can we assess which adolescent will go towards addiction and which adolescent will not. One of the risk factors is that when there can be, let's say, abuse, or when parents themselves use substances or alcohol or smoke. These are definite risk factors. Sometimes it can also be if there are other environmental factors like peer pressure, or they're in a group which does a lot of which uses multiple substances. But for no two individuals, these factors all work the same. You can look at siblings in a family. There's a lot of studies which has been done on children of alcoholics. No two children behave the same way. so too for adolescents, right? Which is why it becomes a multiple risk factor category, which means that a combination of one or more of these factors can have a significant impact, and it can impact different people differently. So if there are, say, two people who have equal risk factors in their lives, there is no guarantee that both of them are going to develop the same kind of addiction. What are these risk factors? One is heredity. Like I've already said, if parents or somebody in the family already is having signs of addiction, then the risk for the adolescents developing addiction is much, much higher. This could be for two reasons. One, yes, that they do carry a genetic load. But the second reason could also be because of the environment. So they learn through maybe imitating, or the parents' addictive behaviors bring about certain stress factors, or make them, susceptible to certain abuse. And that then is a risk factor that can compound their use, and then abuse, and then addiction, right? So heredity is one. Family factors, parenting factors, strong reason for pushing individuals towards different kinds of addiction. And the environment, which includes stress, which includes peer pressure, which includes the company that these individuals keep, and then also personality factors. What do I mean by personality factors? One of the most important endophenotype, as it is called, is that of psychological dysregulation. What is psychological dysregulation? It presents in three different ways: cognitive dysregulation, behavioral impulsivity, and emotional ability. All these three, in fact, studies have looked at exploring from childhood upwards into adulthood, and dysregulation is one thing that stands out quite significantly and is a consistent predictor of whether or not an individual is susceptible for addiction. And I say this with a lot of responsibility, that when we diagnose children with ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, with conduct disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, straight away, these are the individuals who are also possessing a significant risk factor for developing addiction. One of the strong reasons for that is this cornerstone of cognitive dysregulation. And I want us to sort of pay attention to cognitive dysregulation. Those of you who've heard my talks in the past know that I often speak of executive functions, working memory, mental flexibility, inhibition, and impulse control. These are the three core cognitive control or executive functions that we often talk of in the three disorders in childhood that I've just mentioned, which is ADHD, conduct disorder, and oppositional defiance disorder. In all these three disorders, a corner or a common theme running through is dysregulation or poor, weaker executive functions. And the cornerstone of all of that is impulsivity. Because it is seen cognitively, they often have an impact on the academic performance of the individual. In addition, these individuals also show behavioral impulsivity, which means they can't wait for their turn. They're constantly butting into conversations. They're, doing things that they know they should not be doing, but cannot seem to control themselves. So on the one hand, it shows us cognitive abilities as on tests. When we assess for working memory, executive functions, we know that that is weaker. Behaviorally, it can be seen. Teachers often say these children disrupt a class. When their work is done, then they go and disturb other children. Peer group often don't want to interact with them because they feel they intrude on conversations, and parents often find it difficult to rein in their behavior and to get a sense of discipline in them. So behavioral impulsivity is very, very strong. The other thing that is also commonly noticed with these individuals is that of emotional lability, which means they're given to frequent outbursts of anger, uh, of being oversensitive, of being aggressive, and that then resulting in a number of negative interactions with the environment and the people around them. These three issues, if seen in childhood, could be under the context of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, conduct disorder, oppositional defiance disorder. Conduct disorder more likely seen among adolescents. So the progression seems to be ADHD in childhood, conduct disorder in adulthood, in adolescence, and then antisocial personality disorder in adulthood. So you can see that that is the transition that occurs. And one thing that runs through as a common thread through all of this is that of dysregulation. When dysregulation is quite significant, addiction stands out as a very, very, very strong possibility in these individuals, right? Now, the environmental factors could be traumatic experiences either earlier on or even in adolescence. Traumatic experiences could include abuse, traumatic experience could include maybe stressful factors like rejection in the peer group. Traumatic experiences could be maybe kidnapping, maybe ransom, maybe being involved in an accident. It could also involve various other things that can threaten the individual. Failure, witnessing a friend's or a known associate suicide. Many of these come under traumatic experiences. The next environmental influence could be that of peer group. Peer group means that when they're with people who indulge in addictive behaviors, the chances of these adolescents also indulging in similar behaviors is very, very high. So for those people who work in the rehabilitative services, like for alcohol, you have groups, alcohol addiction, you have groups which are called as the AA or the Alcohol Anonymous. And then you have the NA for substance abuse, which is the Narcotic Anonymous. These are groups conducted by other addicts who then recruit people to encourage them to give up their addictive behaviors, right? So these groups, when they have done research, they find that an individual is able to abstain from whatever the addiction as long as they are in the company of people who want to abstain or who want to give it up. The moment they go back into the company of people who use these substances, or like if we're looking at addiction of smartphones, if people who are constantly interacting with other people who are on social media, say for 4 hours or more in a day, then the chance of relapse is much, much higher. Parenting factors again and again and again keep coming back in many of the research as a very strong environmental factor. One, like I've already said, the genetic load. Two is either a very permissive parent or neglectful parent. Both both parenting styles are at great risk for addiction or the individual developing addictive behaviors. Those of you who attended Ridhi's talk earlier on parenting styles, she did mention that permissive parents as well as neglectful parents tend to produce children who are either overly dependent or are emotionally withdrawn. As a consequence, they often go to addictive either substances or behaviors as a means of coping with the situations. Right? Therefore, these are really very, very conducive to placing an individual at risk for developing addiction. I just thought I would present a story of a child that I used to see many, many years ago. He was by no means a child when I saw him, but the story started when he was very, very young, which highlights the personal factors. He was, or he could easily have been diagnosed as having ADHD, but the parents never consulted anyone at that point. They just kept blaming each other for the child's behaviors. And as a consequence, there was a lot of marital discord. But on the personal front, the child began developing impulsivity quite significantly, which got reinforced by a lot of inconsistent parenting, right? So that was one factor with this child. As he grew older, it just stopped becoming more a problem in school because he was quite intelligent and he was doing well despite the complaints that he was getting in school. But what continued to happen was the rift between the father and the mother widened to a point where they started using this child as a way of getting back at each other. The father would be very strict, very punitive. He was critical of his son. He would often blame the wife for any of the son's misbehaviors. As a consequence, the mother teamed up with the son and she started protecting him from the father. So anything he did wrong, like he could tell lies, he would steal, he would be missing from school for a few hours, she would not report it to the husband because she was afraid that the husband would take it out on the child. And so they started developing a bond. Over a period of time, the child realized that he could manipulate the mother and she would not report him to the father. And so he got away with a lot of things, and that started becoming okay for him to do. So the stealing started increasing. Few tens became 20s, 20s became hundreds, hundreds started becoming in the thousands. Stealing of money started. Once that happened, then the father realized that things are getting out of control. He took charge and he shifted the child to a residential school. And by this time, the child was already in his I think he was about 13 or 14 by the time they shifted him to a residential school. Sorry, he was around 13 when they shifted him to residential school. When they did shift him to residential school, he considered it as a form of punishment. And so he started hating his parents, particularly his father, for it. But unfortunately for him, around this time, he also started getting bullied in the residential school. So his stealing worsened, and to a point where one day he jumped over the school compound, he ran away from school, and he went in to a gaming center quite close to his school, sat there for about 8 hours straight, from evening, I think around 7 till early hours of the morning. He sat in this gaming center and he started gaming. That was when his life took a really bad turn. He developed very, very severe form of gaming addiction. The school authorities reported him missing. It became a police case. Then the parents came to know of it. They looked for him all around, and finally they were able to trace him back to this gaming center. Then they realized that the residential school will not work for him. They brought him back home, but and they kept a close watch on him. The parents attended counseling and they started to get their act together. They realized how their inconsistency was affecting the child. But by then, his addiction had reached very quickly, had peaked, and he started frequently missing from home to a point where 4 hours, 4 days, 5 days, he would be missing from home. And invariably, parents would find him in some gaming center or the other. He was encouraged by the gaming center to keep coming back, and they would give him free food because he was very, very good at gaming. He started competing internationally and he would win a lot of tournaments. And because of that, he had a huge fan following. That became his go-to for developing a sense of, I'm good at something finally. And then it became very difficult for him to give up gaming. He finally dropped out of school, and that's when the parents sought help from me, right? So, of course, work went on, and maybe I can come back to this story a little later. But the point I'm trying to make is that in this child, there were multiple factors which kept changing as his system evolved or his symptoms evolved, pushing him towards gaming addiction. Right. Of course, today he has managed to overcome that and he's sustaining himself at work, but he stays in a remote location where he has very limited access to the internet. But The point is that he came to me when he was probably in his early 20s, and he said, I want to change. That's why I'm here. And that's when the work started really with him. So, multiple factors, ADHD, the discord between parents, and then the inconsistent parenting, and then the environmental factor of bullying, and the fact that he blamed his parents for going to sending him to a residential school. All of this put him at great risk for gaming. So we saw alcohol, substance abuse being very, very common among adolescents earlier on. Then it became gaming, and now since the pandemic, an explosive amount or number or percentage of young individuals being addicted to various gadgets. It could be gaming, consoles, it could be smartphones, it could be social media. Many, almost 80% of adolescents report that they're constantly on some social media platform or the other, almost continuously. And we saw the statistics last time. One of the reasons, so there are a number of studies, and a lot of people have said that over the last 4 years, the number of problematic users of social media or smartphones has risen to a point where everybody is concerned because of two things. One, this has a significant negative impact on their academic performance. And this is a crucial phase, like we said in the beginning, where they're having, in the Indian education system, for example, it comes at a point where they're bridged between two very, very important board exams, grade 10 and grade 12. Right. So if at this point in time, gaming takes away all of their energy, obviously their academic performance is going to drop, which then limits the kind of success that they can have as far as career is concerned. But another alarming thing that happens is it brings about significant negative changes in the brain. We already spoke about the pruning that happens in the brain. The longer they are on the social media sites, the greater the impact on the developmental trajectory on the brain. Already the brain is going through changes. Eventually, the change will set right on its own, and we would have a logical center which takes over control of the emotional center, and you and I are able to logically work through a situation, even if emotions are questioned. But in an adolescent, this becomes a little difficult because of the biological changes that are happening in the brain. If the individual at this stage is exposed to large amounts of screens and they spend hours on screens, this impacts this normal trajectory of development to a point where the amygdala consistently exerts pressure on the logical centers, which is the prefrontal cortex, leaving them always emotionally labile, having cognitive dysregulation and behavioral dysregulation. So people have often reported it as an overtaking of the dopamine centers in the brain, which then drives them to be addicted, maintaining or perpetuating the addictive behavior. So we've got to really be careful about this. One, younger they are, and the earlier they are exposed to social media and the longer they spend on social media, the much more negative impact it's going to have, which means that if a young child is spending long hours, by a young child I mean maybe 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, the longer a younger child spends on social media platforms or on any kind of screens. It could be their smartphones, it could be laptops, it could be tabs. The risk of addiction later on in their lives as they approach adolescence is higher. And the risk of having a negative impact on volume changes in their brain, connectivity changes in their brain is very, very high. And this then leads them to also develop depression, anxiety, and it impacts their sleep and eating habits, right? So when I say social media, it automatically now also means you're addicted to smartphones. So because of the easy accessibility of Wi-Fi, the adolescents are constantly connected on their smartphones. They very conveniently tell us smartphones are required for a lot of their academic schedules, which is true. I have my alarm on it. I have my timetable on it. I have my friends messaging me about homework on it. I have my teachers sending syllabus, and I also have my exam schedule on this. True, while all of this is true, it also has addictive properties of apps and games and social interactive sites, which then keeps them constantly hooked to it, leading to a sense of fatigue, a sense of low self-esteem, and towards depression or low mood, right? So to understand a little bit about what happens in the brain, there are two systems in the brain. One is an impulsive system, and the other one is a reflective system. When an individual, and I'm talking about those who are in harmful use, or who are moving towards addiction, which is 3 or more hours of only entertainment use of social media or screens. So when they're using it to read a paper, or when they're using it to look at their syllabus and to do some school related work, we are not counting those hours, but we are looking at people who use the smartphones for 3 or more hours exclusively for entertainment. In such individuals, there's a huge change in the reflective and the uh, impulsive systems in the brain. One is in the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, and the other in the frontal lobes, which is the reflective part of the brain. So you have these three systems, not so much worried about the mentalizing network. That is more for adolescents who, the older adolescents who are constantly on social media, who are posting and who are waiting for likes from people. That the mentalizing system, which you can see all these colored areas here in the brain, that is, how do other people view me? What are they thinking of? How can I be more like them, right? So that's what these regions do. But I'm talking about these two specific regions. One is a self-reflection system. What am I doing? How can I better myself? Versus the reward network, which is in the ventral striatum and the ventral tegmentum and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So this is the reward system, which is overactive in adolescents, and they would choose something that would give them immediate gratification over something that maybe over a month I can look for returns, right? So we were just talking to some parents today who said that my child is not looking for what will happen to me in future. My child is always looking at today or tomorrow or right now. How can I get away with this behavior? Which is, of course, happening because of the developmental changes that are happening in the brain. But additionally, if you are on screens for long times, more than 3 hours, the reward center gets impacted quite significantly to a point where that drives them to have one increased craving and leads them to look for immediate gains, not something, that, okay, if I put in 3 hours of studying now from now up until February, then in March, when I have my board exams, I can really do well. That's a long-term gain. The adolescents are not wired to look at long-term gain. If I'm on Discord for 3 hours today, I can really impress my friends at how smart I am, and tomorrow I would have a great time in school because I will be a hero. So they're always looking at immediate gains. The longer they spend on social media or on smartphones or on screens, they tend to reduce the actual cells in the brain, in the nucleus accumbens, which is part of the impulsive system, which means if there are fewer cells, then there is less control and more impulsivity, which then increases their craving because it means they're looking for immediate rewards. So I don't care about what happens tomorrow. I want to feel good now. And that's what happens when they are so consistent over even like a period of 4 days. If they are on screens for more than 3 hours, immediately it reduces the gray matter in the nucleus accumbens. So you can see instant changes in the brain. And then what happens to the reflective system? The reflective system should tell you, boss, you've been on this for a very long time. Enough is enough. You have an exam tomorrow. Shut your phone down and sit down to study. That's what the reflective system will do to you and me. If you have a meeting tomorrow and you need to prepare for it, then you're not going to be sitting and watching the India-Sri Lanka match. You're going to say, all right, I can see the highlights later, or maybe I can just check the scores every now and then. I have this meeting to prepare for, and you're going to mute your phone to say, or tell your friends, don't call me and tell me, I will watch Surya Kumar Yadav in action tomorrow, but after my meeting is over, but I have a meeting to prepare for. That is what your reflective system will do. But in an adolescent, because they have been constantly on screens, the posterior cingulate, the PCC is the posterior cingulate cortex, ACC is the anterior cingulate cortex. So we are looking at that region in the brain, which then there is reduced volume in this region, which then suppresses the control in these individuals, right? And the reward system hijacks, takes over the reflective system, and it produces that craving, intense craving, to a point where they're constantly on it. They don't even like it. I don't know why I'm here. I don't enjoy it anymore, but I can't seem to stop, is what research is constantly telling us, right? So whether, even if they are not on a screen, this is what resting state means. Even when they are not doing any activity on their own, you can see all of these changes in their brain, which impacts their attentional control and which results in an inability to streamline their attention towards something more productive, right? So they spend more and more hours on the screen because their brain has now become wired. So what are some of these common signs that we can pick up? One, definitely sleep deprivation. That's a very, very sure short sign that something is off. The next thing, it can impact many of them. Not everybody, is their eating patterns. Then the lying starts. They hide. I don't want my parents to know what I'm doing. So the closing of the door starts, or they will be like, you don't worry about my studying, I'll take care of it. And then they're sitting in the room behind closed doors and you don't know what they are doing, right? So the lying and the hiding behavior start. And then you see sudden changes in their behavior where emotional lability is a thing. At the drop of a hat, they get angry, they are yelling, they break things, they're fighting with you, they're aggressive, they're swearing more. All of these changes indicate that probably the child is moving towards addiction. Moving on to what parents can actually do. One is to take control over this and make sure that you are aware of what is happening. Be honest with yourself and allow your child to understand that it's the behavior that you're after, it's not them, right? And you want them to be able to change. By this, I don't mean like every day I explain to you, don't be on screen so long, it's not good for you, it's not good for you. You've told them 2 days, 3 days, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And despite that, if there is no change in the behavior, then let us see how we can help them. Can we set limits and boundaries? How can we take control over this? Because they are not in a position to plan, understanding that, they need some help with this. Can we, no, so either parents ignore or they get angry and punitive. Can we maintain a balance, be respectful, yet be firm in the decisions and the boundaries that we set? Can we encourage them to look at better coping strategies? I understand you're under a lot of stress. You don't want to think about exams. Thinking about exams make you, anxious. Can we talk about what else you can do? Maybe you can listen to music, or maybe, you and I can go for a walk, or maybe drinking hot chocolate milk can help you feel less stressed. And then I can sit with you when you're studying, you do your studying, I do my work. Can we look at healthy, better coping strategies for them? And also, if none of these work, please seek help immediately or at the right time, right? Two things that studies have often looked at in terms of how parents can support their children who any form of addiction. One is to develop healthy hobbies, because the moment, like for example, may not be so true for alcohol or substance, but it does have an impact on that as well. But for behavioral addictions, if I'm going to a social media site to make myself feel better, instead, if I had a hobby, maybe I can do carpentry, maybe I can do gardening, maybe I can listen to music, or maybe I can look at video editing and how I can hone my skills on how to make videos and edit them, right? Developing healthy hobbies rather than mindlessly scrolling through endless pages of social media. The other one, both are important, is to control your impulses. Remember, I spoke about dysregulation as a cornerstone. The good news is that you can help your child improve regulation by improving executive functions, by doing things to improve attention, working memory, mental flexibility, and inhibition. You're allowing them to improve their or control their impulses, which then will strengthen the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, all regions which were showing a negative impact of addiction. And as that happens, you will see these individuals becoming stronger and stronger in their resolve to give up the different forms of addiction. So both have to go hand in hand. One way to educate your child rather than simply dishing out punishments to them is to educate them in terms of, are you aware of your own pattern of use? This is what you do. Can we talk about that? Why don't you observe yourself, how you behave in these kind of situations? That way, then you will be able to identify triggers. Once you identify triggers, then you can avoid people who are encouraging you to do that, or stay away from people who are triggering these negative states in you. From there, then move on to healthier coping styles, and then ask somebody who's a reliable source who can support you in this journey of wanting to stay away from an addictive process. For example, currently I'm talking to one adult and one adolescent who is addicted to smartphones, right? So both of them, we have identified triggers, we have identified their patterns of use, and then we have set out a schedule, which they have agreed on in the sessions with me. Once that is done, we then put it out as maybe on a timetable, and then they report to me every day in terms of how much of that timetable they've been able to stick to, what went wrong, what worked for them, what did not work. And every day I message them back, encouraging them for having sticking to their schedule, and then looking at what part of the schedule they've not been able to focus on and see how they can rework it. So we look at it day by day. Yesterday, they follow this adult that I was talking about. Yesterday, he did only 50% of his timetable he was able to follow. But today, he sent me a big screenshot which says 70%. And we had a discussion at the end of last night saying, okay, yesterday you were able to do 50%. Can you set a target for 80%? I was a little over ambitious. And then he messaged me back saying, no, I think I will work on 70. And today he sent me a screenshot, which then proved that he was able to stick to the schedule 70% of the time. So there's a lot of revising, there's a lot of constant feedback and hand holding from a reliable source. Of course, he was given an option to maybe choose his parents, but he preferred to do it with me, right? And that's how we could support the individual. The individual needs support, not labeling. The individual needs somebody who can be stable, somebody who can be firm, but at the same time not be critical of them, but to support them through this process. We would also have to strengthen maybe the parents in terms of how they can deal with it. early identification is really, really crucial. It saves a lot of trouble. But if that is not possible, then having an open conversation, allowing the parents to know how they're contributing to the continuation of this behavior, bringing them in and showing them how they can have a respectful yet firm conversation with their child, and also working with the individual who is showing behavioral addiction or substance addiction, are different ways in which they can be helped. Group work also helps tremendously. Connecting them with other people who face similar situations and helping them to support each other goes a long way in helping them through difficult situations. Also focusing on other positive activities, sports, meditation, hobbies, having a sense of a community, and depending on the age, maybe even uh, religious activities could be something that they work on. For individuals who are seeking help from addiction, definitely cognitive behavior therapy, mindful based intervention methods. There is a lot of literature to say both helps. For substance related like alcohol, cigarettes, and substance use or drugs, motivation enhancement therapy has been really very, very popular, along with CBT and supportive psychotherapy, which looks at what is motivating you to go towards these, and how can we then encourage you to go towards something more, a more positive coping strategy. And like I said earlier, involving the entire family to seek help and to work as a unit is something that really helps. Um, to sort of wrap up, early identification is very important. Looking at building skills proactively rather than wait for the ball to drop, to work on impulse control mechanisms, and also to look at self-worth, time management, and to work on understanding emotions and emotional connectivity. If we are looking at social media addiction, we also need to look at, instead of using only social media sites, can you also actually physically, face to face, interact with peers and use that as a way of, uh, coming out of social media addiction? As we wrap up, just want to leave you with the thought that it's not something that a change that can happen overnight. To be or to get reach a stage of addiction, it doesn't take very much time. The switch happens very, very quickly. Like I said, 4 days of use, you see tremendous changes in the brain. But the treatment, there can be a lot of ups and downs. Expect those ups and downs, expect failures along the way, be prepared for it. Therefore, then, as a person helping this individual, you will be able to hold their hand well when the drop happens. Then let's look at healthy forms of communication and support. And as parents, set limits, be firm. And if you think that you can show them the way, then be ready to walk the talk, which means if you don't want your child to be on screens for a lot, then you should also stay away from it. Yeah, so I'll stop here. Thank you so much for your patient listening. I'll stop sharing and I'm open to taking questions.
If anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself or put it in the chat box.
Hi, ma'am. This is Parag here.
Yeah,
Thanks
hello.
for arranging this session. It's really, um, useful session, very insightful. Um, so I have probably a generic question. When we
Mm-hmm.
say the child is addicted to something, a social
Mm-hmm.
media or something, I mean, on what stage can we say tell it as an addiction? For example, if a child is using the gadgets, mobile phones for social media for a couple of hours, let's say, or 1 hour, um, I mean, what is the demarcation or what is the criteria of telling it as an addiction? How, when do we call it out?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So one is, so there are specific criteria for us to call it addiction. I won't list out all of them, but one of the things is a constant preoccupation with it, constantly thinking about it. When will I get back on it? For how long can I use it? I haven't had this for a long time. Can I go back to it? Right? Constant preoccupation with it. Using it for longer and longer to get the same benefits again, right? And this impacting your other day-to-day activities. To name a few, these are three really important ones. So for example, in the context of, let's say, you said smartphone use, right? So while I'm in school, I'm always thinking about it. When will I come back home? And when can I use my phone? When can I talk to my friends on the phone? When can I message them? And therefore not paying attention in class. This having a direct impact on, oh, I didn't hear tomorrow my teacher announced that tomorrow there will be an exam. I missed out on it. I've not completed my notes because I was not able to pay attention. And then I use the phone when as soon as I come home, that's the first thing I pick up. I'm not talking to anybody, complete withdrawal from other people. And then I'm using this for long hours. But yesterday I used it for 4 hours. That was not enough. Today I want it more and more. And the moment it's taken away from me, then I feel like, I've lost something important. So these are all signs that indicate addiction. There are specific criteria that is used for diagnosis, but a lot of these are signs that you as parents can see in your child.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Makes sense.
Sure.
Hi, ma'am. Joshil here.
Yeah,
I
hi.
had
Yeah.
a question regarding you spoke about the case you spoke about Adarsh, right? You said he would also
Yes.
lie. So I had a similar question around those lines, that when a child constantly
Mm-hmm.
lies, maybe in therapy or with parents and with clinicians, how do we exactly like go about it? Do we like call them out immediately, or how do we exactly go about the whole lying bit? Yeah.
Right. Uh, so lying can happen for two or three reasons. One, to escape punishment. Two, because it was them. It's a lying effort and experience no remorse. And the three reasons often are associated with probably three different kinds of diagnostic categories. Depending on what kind of a category that they would belong to, diagnostic category, the dealing of it would be included in the intervention method. But if we were to tackle only lying, regardless of whether it's because of ADHD or because of conduct disorder or because of personality disorder, whatever it is, most often being upfront with the individual, that the individual has lied, helping them um, often admit, or bringing the stage in therapy where the individual realizes or can admit to the therapist that, yes, this is what I did, is very important. And that then gives you an opportunity to bring it up as a conversation, not something that is to be tiptoed around eggshells, but then to actually bring it up and ensure that that is a target and focus in your therapies. So if you want to directly work on it, the best way to do it is to ensure that the individual admits to it in the therapy, whatever strategies you want to use to bring it to that level. Once that's done, then you talk of it as any other behaviors. You do a behavioral analysis, you look at the frequency, you look at the trigger factors, you look at discussing alternate ways, and then you set up a schedule, right? I've often found that with children, a simple thing like, your behavior chart, you do a frequency chart where lying is concerned. That when somebody who's associated with the child is aware that the child has lied, they would just quietly go up to this chart and put a mark, a tally mark. And at the end of the week or end of the day, that tally is counted and that is reported back to me. I've had several children that we do this with the parents. No communication in terms of you stop the lying or whatever. But if it's not related with any, say, personality disorder, if it's not related with conduct disorder, then with children, usually this helps, because what happens is often lying happens because they do something impulsively and then they get into trouble and they want to avoid punishment. So the moment this is brought to their awareness that they have lied and they've been caught, or I know that you're lying, then they that awareness in itself helps them in regulating their behavior, which then leads to controlling their impulses. So these are different techniques. Definitely with, of course, his name is not Adarsh. I deliberately changed the name. But with him, he was fully aware that he was lying. And then we had a full discussion about the lying. And then we set a schedule on when he can report his lying to me. And of course, he might have underreported the lying, but the reporting to me, I'm bringing it to his awareness, and he knows when he's lying. And then he makes a of wanting to stop this lying, and this is what he would do. So we were able to discuss that, and eventually over a period of time, the lying and then the running away from home and the stealing stopped.
Right. I also had one follow-up question. So, in case
Sure.
like you bring it up and they constantly like deny it, do you just then wait it out and next time they lie, you again bring it up with them, or you just bring, like, I'm aware we shouldn't like critically uh say anything or take our reflexes out there, because it's very innately, like, it can happen,
Sure.
but
Sure.
instead of that, like, is there like a way we have to, like, is there another strategy that we should be using just so that they don't do that again, or we just wait it out?
Right. So I understand where your question is coming from. The dilemma you're having is that of a therapist versus dilemma. Can
Yeah.
I allow the lying to go on? Or as a therapist, should I be direct your conflict?
Yeah.
As a therapist, it's best not to enter moral or an ethical dilemma, because that then calls for you're judging that behavior as wrong. So as a therapist, I would, and it really helps to take a neutral stand, because that then allows the individual or the client to bring this up as a behavior without feeling shame or guilt. So they hide it or they deny it because they feel shame or guilt. By being non-judgmental and being open about it, you are facilitating that open conversation with them. Although it's very, very difficult, but each of us have our own ways of dealing with it. But if you're able to achieve that I know you're lying, but my focus is not on the lying, but my focus is on helping you understand that you lie in these situations because of this, and this is the consequence of your lying. Therefore, what do you want to do about it?
Right.
So you move away from the lying and
Hmm.
talk about the individual and the strategies that work and won't work for him or her.
Yes, that makes more sense. Like putting the focus on them again. Yeah. Thank you so
Right.
much for the insight.
Sure. No worries.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Sunita.
Yeah.
Am I
Hi,
audible?
Sunita. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I have a small question. So teenage,
Mm-hmm.
like kids, we as parents, we have to allow some half an hour or 1 hour screen time. So
Yes.
we as parents expect from kids that okay, it's 2 o'clock, then 3 o'clock you will have to switch it off, whether it is TV or mobile or any other gadget. But
Mm-hmm.
but they will be so engrossed and involved, so they don't have the discipline to have the timer and switch off themselves. But I feel
Correct.
that kids should have that much that much responsible to do it on their own for a healthy development, I feel, because we cannot be
Sure,
constantly pushing them to do something and not to do something. That should not happen. Once we have to
sure.
just tell them that this is good for you, this is bad for you, then they will have to do on their own. But
Mm-hmm.
what age? But as 12, 13, my daughter is 12 years. She will definitely not do it. I will just tell her, it's time up, baby. Why are you not switching it off on your own? I just tell that.
Right.
But how long I mean, at what age can we expect that, they will do on their own? Like, because they are kids, we cannot be strict. See, if you are lenient, they will do something more. And if you are strict, they will do something else. So
Right,
this is
right.
a hairline difference, which we will have to understand. At the same time, we cannot compromise on the child's development also.
Sure.
So nowadays parenting is, I feel, very difficult. So so at what age we can expect, and if at that age 13, 14, if they are not doing that, how to make them
Mm-hmm.
understand that you be responsible and you do it on your own. Don't expect me to remind you for small things. That how to do that. I just need guidance on this. Like, I've been thinking about
Right.
this from a very long time.
Sure, sure. Well, that's the magic wand, right? I wish we all had. Because if we can achieve that,
Yeah.
nothing like it. But again, and that and when they give them, must understand is as far as the screens are concerned, the screens are built in a way that it automatically brings about craving by hijacking the reward system in the brain, which
Okay.
means that we instantly, even if you and I were on it, we
Mhm.
instantly become slaves to it if we have weaker, or if we have dysregulation of any
We
kind.
don't have focus. Mm.
Yes, if we don't have control over ourselves.
Yeah.
In adolescence, particularly pre-adolescence and adolescence, that age that your daughter is in now,
Mm.
that control is slowly going away because inherently the brain is going through these changes, which
Okay.
means if it's chocolates, if it's maybe getting up to go for exercise or to do homework, it might have been easier, which was what you and I had when we were growing up.
Yeah.
But now the nature of the smartphones and the screens are so addictive that these children are not able to come out of it on their own.
Mm.
They definitely need external help, right? So the
Mm.
first two things that we can do is, one, have a discussion with them, set limits, and encourage them to be responsible about sticking to that limit on their own. And two, give them, like you started off by saying, 1 hour we have to give our children time on the screens.
Some entertainment. Huh.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be screens.
Yeah.
Entertainment, yes, but
Mm.
can we talk of other forms of entertainment also? Is a discussion.
Correct.
I'm not saying keep them away from screens totally, but can we suggest alternatives and
Mm.
say, okay, this is one form of entertainment. There can be other forms of entertainment that you can choose,
Mm.
right? And that's how, so on the one hand, encourage regulation, on the other hand, suggest alternatives, and
Mm.
then see how this goes. One other thing which I have very effectively used with a lot of people is, especially if it's with smartphones, like they have a game, they like the game, then you put a lock to it, and that lock acts as a reminder that you've used this for 1 hour and it'll lock on its own. And you have to come to me every time to get it unlocked because only I know the password.
Mm.
That way, you are not around to monitor it. It locks on its own. And
Mm.
then they have to come up to you to report that it has gotten locked. I know it's not possible to do it on a TV, or if it is, I'm not
Mm.
aware of it.
Mm.
But for smartphones and tabs, I know it's possible. And this
Mm.
is done not when your child is in school and you sneak up and do it, but have a
Mm.
discussion with the child and say, I'm doing
Mm.
this to help you. We are in this together. You're not alone.
Mm.
I'm there to support you. Right? I'm not
Mm.
there to blame
Mm.
you, but I'm doing this as a healthy way. And then we can talk of, now that I've taken the phone away. So
Mm.
they
Mm.
often don't know what to do once you take the phone away or the TV away from them. And that's where the problem comes, right? So then
Correct.
we can talk of what you can do in its place and look at something that they would enjoy. Of course, it's not going to be as entertaining or enjoying as a TV or a phone, but we've got to try.
Okay, ma'am. I'll just tell her, like, if you are smart, you shouldn't be using smartphone for a long time. You will become
Correct.
dumb. So
Correct. But
I just say
then,
that. Huh.
correct. But what you're inherently telling her is because you're not stopping, you're not smart. And that would make her upset. You see?
Okay,
So
okay.
you're not empowering her. Instead, you are blaming her.
You just you use that for, like, for educative purpose. You need some information, so for that you can use the smartphone, and where you have to use it productively. That way we
Correct.
have to tell them. Okay, okay,
Correct.
okay,
And
okay,
help her
okay.
to set limits and say, you tell me when you want to stop.
Okay, okay, okay,
Right? Put the onus
okay,
on
ma'am.
her.
Yeah. Very, very useful workshop. Very interesting and very helpful, ma'am. Thank you very much for the workshop.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, please do
Thank
conduct
you.
more and more workshop with different topics and considering teenagers in mind.
Sure. Yeah, I hope you've registered with us so that you can
Yeah.
be on our mailing list, and we'll put you on the group
Yeah,
as
I
well,
have
and you'll get
registered. Yeah.
updates in terms of whenever we are. Yeah,
In
sure.
fact, my
Fantastic.
daughter comes to Samvid also. She is taking some sessions.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Bye.
Sure. Bye-bye. Any other questions? Okay. If there aren't any questions in the chat box, then maybe we can wrap up.
Yes, ma'am, for the such as how it grateful to hear it from you. And thank you everybody who could join us today. And thank you for asking questions. It just makes it more interactive and helps us deepen our understanding. And in the next month, which is the 31st of October, we'll be talking about how to have effective communication with adolescents. So I really hope that you all can join then as well and, help us deliver like an interactive webinar. So I hope to see you all there. And if you're okay, we can end it.
Sure. Thank
Hi,
you.
ma'am. Sorry for asking late this question, but may I ask?
Sure, Nandita. Sure.
Yeah, ma'am. If, as you said, that being as a parent, we should be firm with the decision.
Mm-hmm.
So just help me out. How can I be firm with my decision without getting into the argument with my son?
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Very.
Yeah. So the anger of your child is understandable because you're taking away something which gives him a sense of satisfaction or something that he uses to cope with his stress. So the anger on his part is understandable, but that doesn't mean you should get angry. And I think we've often had this discussion about how it's okay for him to be angry, but wait for his anger to subside and then resume a conversation with him. Don't have a conversation when he's angry. You don't have to be angry also. Wait for him to calm down and then proceed with the conversation. Maybe some of them take 2 days to calm down, some of them take a few minutes to calm down. It's okay, but the conversation will happen only when they have gained control over their behavior, because the dysregulation is part of the problem, and the more they are on screens, the worse the dysregulation gets. And therefore the emotional lability or the anger, the lability means frequent fluctuating emotions. So the anger is, so just wait it out. Once he's calmer, then we can have a discussion. Don't yield to his demands. Be firm on your decision, and soon he will 2-3 times of this, he will understand that there's no point in me getting angry because I'm not going to get the results that I want.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. I got it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good night.